Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I'm super excited. We have our guest with us. His name is Christopher Anatra. I probably said that wrong. Sorry, Chris. But anyway, welcome again to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, where you can discover your truth. Today, we broadcast live on United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Please join us today in one of the chat rooms to connect with our guest, and feel free to ask any questions that you like or any comments. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Happy to be here, Caroline.
Thank you. So exciting to talk to you. We have two topics that we want to cover today. One of them really intrigued me, and I thought it would be a great way to get started. It's about the JFK assassination and the Stemmons witches. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the mechanics of the Matrix and the Mandela Effect. So, Chris, give us some of your background, how you got started in this line of work, and just tell us about what you're working on, what you're doing, maybe the conference that you're involved in as well. So please feel free to take it away.
Sure. Probably your viewers are wondering, who is this Christopher Anatra person? So, yeah, I have a channel on YouTube called The Quantum Businessman. And there's a reason I chose that name too. Because a lot of people are like, why did you choose the name Quantum Businessman? That may not make any sense. Or for some people, it sounds kind of harsh, but there's a reason for it. And it has to do with timelines. And it has to do with things that I did related to business and other timelines, and the whole concept of how now timelines are merging. So people may start to mistake me for another version of me for something that I did on another timeline that's got merged into this timeline. And these type of things aren't just going to happen to me. They're going to be happening to all of us. So be prepared for people to tell you things about what you did or what you said, and you're like, I never did any of those things. I never said any of those things. But on another timeline, you did, where that person's consciousness was being part of your experiencing your avatar, so to speak. So, yeah, so for myself, I've always been involved in the world of business. Right now, I have a company that creates computer software for food distribution. And the specialty that I have in the supply chain has to do with getting food to restaurants, specifically restaurants and grocery stores. So that's something that I do like on the side. It's actually been takes up most of my time. And then kind of like as a hobby, I create these other videos. And as I've been, awakening more and more, I've been doing more and more for this type of exposing of how the reality works, for exposing the mechanisms of the Matrix, for exposing like what this place actually is, from what I can see from where my frequency of where my consciousness is. So that gives you a little bit about me. And then getting involved in this Mandela Effect actually happened because of my business, because people would call my company and say that you have a bug in our software. It just changed all of our Haas avocados to Hass avocados. This is as an example. Or the Stouffer stovetop stuffing no longer exists in inventory. Now it's just called stovetop stuffing made by Kraft. Like, what happened to our Stouffer's? Like, why would your software make these changes? And at first I didn't know what the Mandela Effect was back then. I literally had no idea. So I'd be like, why would the software make changes like that? And then that led me into discovery about how the reality works. Because I don't know about you, Caroline, but I remember Haas avocados, Haas, not Hass avocados the way it is now. But that's just one example. I don't know if you kind of feel the same way about that.
Oh, I absolutely do. I've noticed quite a few things that blew my mind, but we have a lot to unpack in what you just talked about. So let's talk about your conference too, because I really would like to plug that a little bit for you guys.
Sure.
I adore all of you that are involved in it, and I think it would be really great for folks to know. So tell us about the Mandela Conference, what it is, the URL.
Yeah. So, well, here's the thing. It ended. So we had it, I think, November 7th through 10th in Nashville, Tennessee, the International Mandela Effect Conference. And we have a website called imec.world. And then on there, you can get some more information about it. It's really about the Mandela Effect. Like the website is about that, and about our YouTube channel, how every month there's a group of 4 of us that get together, including Cynthia Sue Larson, who I know you know, and Jerry Hicks, for example.
Yeah, I
And,
just interviewed him. It was great.
Yep. And there's also Shane Robinson. He has a channel called Unbiased and On the Fence. You know, and every month, usually towards the end of the month, we talk about all the latest Mandela effects. And it's nonstop. Some people are like, oh, maybe it happened, you know, once or twice or 10 times or 20 times. There's literally thousands of these Mandela effects, and they're not stopping. Like, they're intensifying. There's more and more and more and more and more. So, yeah, so what we do at the Mandela Effect Conference is really cool, because in person, once a year, we get to get together as a group, meet everybody in person, which makes just all the difference in the world. You get to talk to people, you get to know their stories, you get to hear their personal Mandela Effect stories, because a lot of people know the big ones, but the personal ones are quite jarring as well. So, so these are things that you would know for yourself that another person may have no idea about, but you know something was a certain way. So, yeah, so with the International Mandela Effect Conference, I think we're doing a lot of good work bringing, opening the conversation for people to talk about it, because modern day science and the global narrative says that we're just misremembering. Like, just, you're misremembering, go back to sleep, human, nothing to see here. But a lot of us are like, no, like, we remember Haas avocados, or we remember Darth Vader saying, Luke, I am your father. Or we remember Snow White, mirror, mirror on the wall. It was never magic mirror on the wall. It was always mirror, mirror on the wall. So we have these memories. We got the global narrative trying to convince us that we're wrong and we're misremembering, but that's not the case, because we all have the same exact memory. So it's really cool when we get together as a group. So next, we're planning another one for 2025. And hopefully we might even see you there, Carol Ann.
Oh, I would love to join you guys in on that. I wanted to go to this year's, but it was a little too, like late notice, but I'll definitely be at the next one for sure. Cool. So before we get into the Mandela Effect, I was very intrigued. I saw a video on your YouTube channel. And of course, folks, I will have all the information where you can get in touch with Christopher, his website, all that good stuff in the description of this video. So be sure on YouTube. So be sure and head on over and please subscribe. That would be awesome. So yeah, if you want to reach out, I'm sure Chris wouldn't mind you shooting him an email on his contact page if you had any questions. But you did a video about these Stemmons witches and the JFK assassination. And I was so intrigued by that. I think you're the only person, right, that has discussed. Did you unearth this yourself? Like, give us some background as to this whole thing.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm always, and those are the Stemmons witches, by the way. It was about, these statues were about 3 miles away when JFK was assassinated. But the JFK assassination is a perfect example of timelines and how they work. So a lot of people have noted these Mandela effects about the JFK assassination. Like, for example, some people remember, like I have a distinct memory when I was younger of seeing the film in black and white, the limo, and there were only 3 people in the limo. And
exactly.
Then as I
remember. Yep.
Yeah. And then when I got older, all of a sudden it changed to 4 people. And then it changed to color. And then more recently, maybe about, for me, this happened in the end of 2016. And all of a sudden there were 6 people in the car. And it was like, things just kept getting stranger and stranger. And then there were more films. So right now, a lot of people just remember the famous Zapruder film by Abraham Zapruder. But now there's like at least 4 or 5 other films of people shooting and getting different angles of the assassination. Another popular one is called the Orville Nix film. So you've got all these new films that are coming in. All of a sudden, there's more and more people that are around that area. Like I remember there's like hardly anybody in that area where he was shot. And now if you look at there's like crowds of people everywhere. And, when I tune into those people, I get that they're time travelers, but that's another story. But it's also related to the Stemmons witches, because the JFK assassination is one of those events in history where there are different factions that have been trying for a different outcome. In other words, some people would want JFK to be assassinated for whatever reasons they had. Other people would not, and they're trying to save him. So there was like a hairball of timelines that were happening. And then recently, for me anyway, when I was doing more research on it, these Stemmons witches came into it. And I'm like, what is going on? But the way it first appeared for me was I was starting to get, I was getting a message to look into the assassination again. And one of the things that's different is that blocking the view of Zapruder's film is now this traffic sign. You don't see the front of it, you just see the back of it. And I know that was never there before. There wasn't this big sign that was like blocking, part of what was going on. So that sign led me to different things. And then, as it turns out, that sign was also the entrance ramp. If you see the back of it, it says Stemmons Freeway. Now, I'll go back another step. So about a month before this information came to me, I went to Scotland, and I went to this place called Iona Island, which is a high frequency, beautiful place in Scotland. It's way out, north of the Highland area. And on Iona Island, King Duncan is buried there. And King Duncan is part of the Macbeth story by Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. So you've got Shakespeare, you've got the whole story of Macbeth. I was on this island where King Duncan's remains are. And then I was getting information about, could the JFK assassination be related to Shakespeare's Macbeth, where basically what's happened, there are these 3 witches that tell Macbeth that if he kills King Duncan, that he'll become King of Scotland. So Macbeth follows through, and he listens to the 3 witches, or what some people might call the fates of Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. And it does come true. King Duncan dies, and Macbeth becomes king. And he rules as king maybe for 18 or 20 years. Then one of King Duncan's nephews or one of his family winds up getting revenge for what happened. So the whole concept, and by the way, I'm going through and giving a lot, but if people watch the video, they'll get the whole overview of what I'm talking about. But yes, so there seems to be a tie-in with black magic, with rituals, like with government, like would people in the government be involved in these types of things? And it appears so, maybe to lock in the assassination, using the fates, using that whole concept of the 3 fates, so to speak. So what starts to happen is when you start diving deeper down the rabbit hole, some of these things start to get exposed. And then I was in the area where the Macbeth and King Duncan things were happening. So I think that kind of lit a spark under me as well, for me to start putting all these puzzle pieces together.
I'll put the link to your YouTube video in the description as well, so folks can watch and you kind of uncover and unpack all the, connect all the dots to it. So it was very interesting. These statues, they're gone. Nobody knows where they're at today. Am I right?
Yeah, there is. Let me see if I can find it. On Facebook, probably a year or so ago, there was a picture, and I'm not going to be able to find it that easily. I'm just going through. Okay, I don't have it prepared to show you that.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, but there's a photograph of these 3 of the statues out in the woods someplace that someone took, and you could tell it's the same statues. It was created by a Mexican sculptor, and this was like a trademark of his work. So they're still out there. We don't know where they are, but somebody placed them someplace where, you know, the public can't find them.
I think I have that. Is that what we're talking about?
Oh, exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like, why would they end up in the woods, like in the middle of nowhere?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly. So this is not the kind of stuff you're going to find in the Warren Report, if that's ever released.
Right.
I mean, we'll get a lot of other information. I think that's going to maybe shock people a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to have to go through a healing process when they figure out, like, there's a lot of darkness in our government and whatever things that go on behind the scenes. So all this stuff is just getting more exposed as we enter this, I call it a new era of light, where there's more light coming onto the planet. So yeah, it's making it, the truth is being more exposed. And even things like, just all kinds of things are being exposed that you would never thought that would come to the light of day.
It's never been more true than nowadays. I mean, they say sunlight is the best disinfectant, so I guess that's so true. What about the timelines, though? Why has that ever happened historically before? Because I feel it too. I was talking to this ufologist, and we were having this intense conversation, and we were talking about something that just felt off, and we couldn't verbalize what it was. And he looked at me and said, "You feel it too, don't you?" And it's kind of like this, you don't really know how to verbalize it, but you feel like something is off kilter, something's not right. Is that what we're talking about here, Christopher? Like these merging of timelines? Maybe you can kind of go into that for folks.
Yes. So what's nice about understanding timelines is that it's made its way into pop culture. So even my kids, like my 12-year-old, can explain what a timeline is because they know all the different, how the movies are working with the timelines. And Spider-Man did this in this timeline, but in this timeline, he didn't do that. So it's kind of cool that even younger people are starting to get an idea of that and how it works. And I think that's on purpose. I think literally the Matrix is trying to wake us up, and they're giving us giving us all of these clues, you know, all in entertainment. I call it soft disclosure in entertainment and movies and books that we read. There are all these different things that are helping us realize that this place is not what we've been taught. And the whole concept of how timelines work, and it's all about vibration, like literally everything is vibrating. And depending on our vibration is the timeline that we get to experience. And the higher our resonance, the higher our frequency, the better the timeline. And when that happens, you know, it's a slow process. It's not like some people might make huge jumps. Some people are at least doing it like a little bit every day. Like I think a lot of us, literally, every time we wake up in the morning, we're in a new timeline. And then other people, seems like every time they blink, they're in a new timeline. So these timelines are like, they're all around us. I say they're like about a micron apart from each other. And things are different. Sometimes they're like almost the same. Maybe it's 99.5% is the same. And then you'll notice like crazy things, like not really that crazy, but for people listening to you, they would be like, that doesn't make any sense. You must be misremembering. Right. Like I had a duffel bag, for example, that was always like blue. It was like a dark navy blue. And then one day it was completely black. Or I had a friend I knew their car was like a forest green color, and all of a sudden it's a black color, or whatever, or, you know, whatever the thing is, whatever the change in the reality is that we spot. And as we get better and better at it, as we spot more and more Mandela effects, we're becoming more observant of the reality. And a lot of us keep spotting them even more. So it doesn't slow down. Once you become aware of what it is and you start to become observant, then all of a sudden you start tuning into more of what's going on around us. So, but basically a timeline is our resonance, the frequency, vibration, resonance of our avatar is changing, which puts us into another timeline. What causes that change? It could be the sun, it could be solar flares, It could be the Earth's vibration, known as the Schumann resonance. It could
Mm-hmm.
be cosmic radiation coming in. It could be things like we've changed our diet, like we're not eating a lot of dense, heavy, like meat-based products. Maybe we're eating more, light food, so to speak. And then that has a big effect on people as well. So there are all these different factors that are going on that's causing people to start to see the timelines.
Do you think that that like the LHC has anything to do with it? You know, what they're doing over in CERN, or is that just coincidence? Because to me, that it seems like there's some type of connection between what's going on over there.
Yeah, and people should keep in mind too, there's like hundreds of these large hadron colliders out there. And a lot of them they've all been tuned by super quantum computers. They all will do the same thing at the same time. So usually it's not just the one in Switzerland, but it's all of them will go off and they'll start to exhibit whatever they're trying to do as these big magnets spin around the track. I call it they're making like a magic circle, so to speak. They're opening wormholes, and there's actually they kind of make fun of people, but there's a lot of stuff from within CERN that alludes to the fact that they've created some Mandela effects. Like there's one of the scientists at CERN that holds up a poster that says Bond number 1 something effect, and the first person that played James Bond, his Mandela was part of his name. It's like really interesting. So they'll actually put things out there to make people wonder about that. Or they'll have the statue of Shiva, the Indian god of death and rebirth. That's like at CERN as well. So there are those type of things. But I think the biggest thing that CERN did, I know this is going to sound way out there, but if people like listen to me and watch my videos, I kind of go way out there. But on December 17th, 2012, okay, something happened. Now, there's a lot of people that were talking about when the Mayan calendar ended on December 21st, 2012. And there are people that say, well, the Earth wasn't destroyed, so obviously there's something wrong with time and chronology for that date. That goes into another story, like understanding how time works, and I call it fraud time within linear time. But basically on December 17th, 2012, CERN did this huge experiment where they cranked up the luminosity of the Large Hadron Collider to the highest level that they ever had it at. And I believe they actually pushed us through a wormhole. And I can't prove that, because if I try to prove it, people will be like, well, how can you prove it? But you can prove it with Mandela effects. So, and there are these Mandela effects that show that we're not the same even in our human bodies and where we thought we were in the Milky Way galaxy. So I'll give you an example. A lot of us were taught by Carl Sagan that our solar system was way out on the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way galaxy, kind of way out there in no man's land. Never been on the Sagittarius arm. Now we're on something called the Orion Spur. We're closer to the galactic center. So our location within the Milky Way has changed. And it goes to the concept of being pushed into a higher harmonic universe. So the location has changed. Planets are changing within our solar system. Planets that I never heard of before are now part of the planetary structures that we know. One is the planet Ceres in the CERES. I had never heard about that planet till maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm kind of one of those astronomy nerds, plus all the dwarf planets that are out there. Right. I think there's a total now of like almost 30 planets that are in our known planets that are in our solar system. So, and then our bodies have changed too. I believe we got pushed into new bodies, bodies where the kidneys are in a different location. Like a lot of us remember the kidneys being in our lower back, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now they've always been in the rib cage on either side of the lower part of our lungs. So all these other body changes, all these other types of things that are, happening to show that something may have happened and we may have been pushed into another area or into another universe within the multiverse. So,
isn't the location
and I
of the
believe
heart
that
in a different spot too? Like I always remember the
Yeah.
heart being on the left side.
Yeah, like when you say the Pledge of Allegiance, you
Yeah,
put your hand over your heart, and it's over on the left side, and then it moved to the exact center of the body, and now it's like tilted. It used to be straight up and down. Now it's more tilted. So there's some on the right, some on the left. So the heart's been kind of like, for those of us that have been watching it, the heart's been kind of moving around a little bit.
That's mind blowing, honestly. So, for folks that don't know what the Mandela Effect is, just give us a quick overview to catch people up in case they don't. Some of them are watching, going, listening, and they have no clue what it is.
Yeah, no, that's good because I find that like when I talk to people, a lot of people have never heard of the Mandela Effect, or they've heard of it, but they have no idea what is this Mandela Effect. But it started with a group of people, including myself, having a clear memory about Nelson Mandela of South Africa dying on Robben Island in prison in the late 80s, either 88 or 89. Turns out that's not the way it was in this timeline. He stayed alive to, I think, at least 2012. He became president of South Africa, that type of thing. But for myself, I remember like the newspaper articles. Well, back then in the late 80s, we didn't have the internet. So I remember I was at a hotel, and how they'd have newsstands. You'd look at the newsstand and you'd see like all the headlines of all the different newspapers. And I remember one day, all the headlines were about rioting in South Africa because Mandela was killed and people were upset. And, so a lot of people have all these clear memories of him dying. And as it turns out, he never did. So it became known as the Mandela Effect. It could have been called anything else, but the whole Nelson Mandela story is the thing that started it. And then in the Mandela Effect world, we call that phenomena dead and alive again. So where a lot of people remember someone dying, and as it turns out, that person never died. So some people remember like Dr. Ruth, if you've heard of Dr. Ruth, who died like 5 or 6 years ago, but it just turns out she just recently died, as an example. Or Jane Goodall that used to work with the chimps in Africa. A lot of people remember her dying like in the late 90s. And then it turns out, no, she never died. She's still alive to this day, and she's an activist and still doing her thing. So there are these different concepts about how this works, and that ties into this whole Mandela Effect. And it's all different areas of life. It's not just dead and alive again. It's pop culture, it's art, it's the geography of the planet. Like literally the geography of the planet's been changing. It affects all these different things. People's names change to something that's slightly different than the way it was before. Yeah, so there's a lot to say about that, but that's the short answer of what I would say the Mandela Effect is.
For me, the one that I remembered ages ago and that drove me nuts was the Fruit of the Loom logo.
Yeah.
I remember it always having a cornucopia with fruit coming out of it. And then all of a sudden the cornucopia was gone. So this was like a few years ago. I went nuts looking all over the internet, and people found old underwear, because that's what they were famous for, like men's and women's underwear. And they showed pictures of the cornucopia, and they denied it, Fruit of the Loom. They said, no, we never had a cornucopia, but there are pictures to prove. So that was a big one for me.
Yeah, when you can find pictures to prove something, that's called residue. But yeah, right. And in this timeline, officially, there's never been Fruit of the Loom has never used a cornucopia on any advertising, label, logo, anything. Yeah.
And I know the Stofers, I always knew it as Stouffer stovetop stuffing.
Yeah.
So
how do you make that up in your head? Like Stouffer stovetop stuffing? And how do like millions of people remember Stouffer stove? Like you don't just like make up these words, by misremembering something, right? They're very specific. Or even the Monopoly Man, right? A lot of people remember him having a monocle, but he's never had a monocle, But you can find like costumes of the Monopoly Man, and a monocle's included.
Right.
So,
And
yeah.
Curious George with the tail, like I always remember him having a tail. Now he has no tail, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and there's so many of them, so many of these different Mandela effects.
What do you think the end game is for the Mandela effect? Like, what is it? Are we all going to like merge into one big timeline? Like, what's the goal? What's the purpose of it? It's got to have an end game.
Yes, definitely. It's a wake-up process. It's a nice, gentle way to start waking people up to what their reality is about. Instead of an alarm clock just blaring in your face, like in the distance, it's like beep, 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 time to wake up. So I think that's what the main reason for it. And then I also, for myself, like I'll tune into these Mandela effects to find hidden meanings, because I think a lot of them are not just random. Like a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a random Mandela effect. Like now Sicily almost touches Italy. And a lot of people, like if you look at a map of Italy, for example, and Sicily, it was always like the boot kicking Sicily, so to speak. And now Sicily's attached to the boot, kind of. Maybe it's like 20 or 30 miles away. And it just looks different. It's huge. So, yeah, so these types of things, like I would do a lot of flying on airplanes and stuff. And I'd be looking at maps and I'd be like, I need to call into the company because they made this map completely wrong. And again, having no idea what the Mandela effect was, but it was actually correct for the timeline that I was in.
So you think it's just all a part of global awakening, this realization and knowledge about timelines and understanding like the Mandela effect for one? Like I'm just not clear on, is it just for us to have a global awakening at the end of the day? What's the driving force mechanism?
Yeah, so you'll know that it's important, first of all, because the global narrative downplays it completely. Like it just says that people are confabulating or misremembering. Like the global narrative does not want people to think that the Mandela effect is real, because then you have, like you have to ask the question, like, if this is real, I want to know what's causing it. Right. And they don't want people to even ask that question. But then if you can get to the point where you can ask the question, part of it's explaining the mechanics of the matrix and how it works and how these different timelines work. And I think the Mandela effect has always been there, actually. Excuse me for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, the Mandela effect, like it's not necessarily a new phenomena, but it's something that it's been intensifying. And because of the internet and how we can all talk to each other, we can get confirmation like, oh yeah, that's a real Mandela effect. Or some people might be like, no, that's not. But basically it's all related to a mass planetary awakening. And a lot of us on this planet have done this on other planets. Like we've been part of other mass planetary awakenings for planets that were, let's say, taken over, so to speak, by whatever version of domination and control was there. And then people were able to or the beings on whatever realm that was, they're able to wake up. So I think the Mandela effect is just the first part of that. For those of us that are observant, can see that what we've been taught, what this reality is, nothing is real, including concepts like object permanence. So sometimes I'll talk about object permanence, and what that means is that everything is being rendered as you see it. Like our bodies are being rendered like software in a video game, so to speak. But let's say I've got a kitchen that's behind me in another room. If myself or another source player is not observing that kitchen, does it exist?
Right.
Or if my car is in the parking lot and there's no one there to observe it, is the matrix rendering it? Now, our brains were taught that it's always there. It's called object permanence. So even if I left my car there, it's always going to be there. But in computer, for example, computer software, video game design, you would never, it just wastes processing power to have every atom of every part of a game displayed all the time. So when we start to unlock our mind, because that's what the Mandela Effect will lead us to next. Like, so how does the reality actually work? How do timelines work? Is there such a thing as object permanence? Blah, blah, blah. All these type of things add to us understanding what's going on here and being able to claim our sovereignty, because we are powerful creator beings, although we've forgotten. And that's why the global narrative, domination and control, that's why they have the power over us, because we have amnesia. We don't remember. But now all these things are going to start to come back to us. So, and gain awakening.
So that was good. So who do you think that they are? That's, I think I heard in Carlos Castaneda's with Don Juan, the book, where we're describing a predator that takes over our mind. And that's not really our mind. It's like this evil, demonic mind. Do you think it's an outside force like the Matrix? We know the Matrix from the movie, and the Matrix is bad. So, red pill good, blue pill bad. So you have an awakening with the red pill, right? So is the Matrix, in your understanding, a bad thing that's taking over human consciousness and our ability to be awakened? Like, explain the Matrix and the mechanics.
Yeah. So initially, when the founders created the Matrix, it was not supposed to be an energy harvesting system like it is now. It was supposed to be a playground. It was supposed to be a way for us to learn, like a school, so to speak. It was a way for us to resolve karmic issues that we may have had in other lifetimes, in other realms, and other places throughout the multiverse. And then something happened where it got hacked. I'll call it got hacked, so to speak. Okay. So when that happened, it became the inverted matrix. And these beings that did that, we'll call them the non-human entities that currently, they're phasing out, their control is being phased out right now anyway. But these non-human entities that have been controlling the matrix are the ones that cause this. For energy harvesting, it's almost like, I think of it like cocaine. So some people will be like, well, what's the advantage to, people call this earth a soul trap, and there are those type of issues as well. So for me, when these beings took it over, they get all of this power from us because we have a direct connection into source. We have this pure energy. We can emit light, like that's pure source light. And that's what these beings thrive on, and it's what they want because they can't produce it themselves. So they need it from others. So it's one of those things where we were kind of, the matrix has changed to what's called I'll call it the inverted matrix. And now it's going back to the original organic matrix.
So just like the movie where we were like batteries for them,
yes,
for the entities, that's exactly what it was manipulated into. So the beings that are doing this, are these beings from like just other planets? Like, are they demonic? What's your take on that?
Okay, my take's going to be weird. So the way I see it is that part of this process is that we created this experience because we wanted new experiences. We wanted a challenge. We wanted to be able to do things we've never been able to do before. We wanted to have like this understand what it is to be in like a 3D type of a realm. So these non-human entities, some people might call them the archons, there's different names, so to speak. We actually created them. We created them. And the roles that they're playing is something that we're having them do because we programmed them to do this to make this game more of a challenge.
Oh, wow.
So that goes beyond what a lot of people will think. It's like, oh, these evil people that have come in from another part of the universe. Maybe that's true, but the way I see it is that we're creator beings and that we actually created them. And when we can awaken more of what's going on in base reality, so right now we're like in a matrix, or maybe we're in a matrix within a matrix. There's another level above us where we're projecting in from. So that whole level, like all these things that are going on, we actually created it all, and we did it because we want to have this excitement, this adventure, and we programmed it so that our lives here were not going to be that easy. We have to struggle to wake up, and because we're naturally gamers, and I say we're champions, because to be able to even come into this place and be part of a mass planetary awakening, and to wake up and shine your light and shine your brilliance, you got to be pretty brave to do that. It's like waking up in a herd of sheep and trying to like convince the sheep, not to follow the Judas goat or whatever they're following. The same type of thing. It's really difficult. And but as people are ready to awaken, they'll awaken. You can't force it on anybody. So
that's the truth.
Yeah. So we have created it all, is the way I see it.
That kind of rings with a resonance of truth for sure. It just makes me wonder why we would make it so painful for ourselves. Like, because life is painful. I mean, most of the time. Learning is painful. Awakening is painful. When you have your awakening, you have to surrender your old way of thinking, and lots of times that involves friends, relationships. So I mean, maybe that's true, that through that suffering we gain the knowledge to move forward.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you could say suffering's part of it too, but part of it is having the experiences that we can have in a 3D astral body. Just the enjoyment of eating food, smelling food, tasting food, that doesn't happen on the other side. That literally doesn't happen. At the IMEC conference, there was someone who used to work with Dolores Cannon, and she was talking about how Dolores would talk about how there were beings out there that felt things like the Earth experience were just a big make pretend thing. Like, you can't go into physical bodies. You can't have this. You can't eat good food or enjoy this or enjoy that, or even the concept of having like an orgasm. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So there are actually beings on the other side that don't even think that what we're experiencing is real. And that's part of the reason why we came into this too. And emotions is another big part of it. So like on the other side, neutrality, like everything is neutral. There is no good versus evil. Here you've got all the emotions, you've got the polarity of duality, you've got all these things that hypnotize you into the game. You've got all your physical senses, you got the emotions that are going on. Everywhere we look, it seems like it's real, when that's not the case. So there's all these things to give us like a completely different experience. And because almost like a bungee jumper or someone that's jumps out of an airplane and, with the parachute and all that, skydiving, they want to they want the adrenaline rush and so forth. So we came in here to not just awaken the planet, but also to have these experiences that we don't have on the other side.
What about folks that are born into poverty and children that are born with horrific diseases? Are these pre-programmed for them so that they could get lessons from it? Is there a specific lesson that they need to learn?
Well, what's interesting is that a lot of those people aren't real. Yes. So like NPCs. Now, I'm not saying that's what all of them are, but a lot of them, like when I was a kid, I'd watched like starving children in Ethiopia, with the big bellies and all that. A lot of that is just, it's like matrix programming. They're not actually real people. In fact, when I tune into it, sounds weird, but for every one true source player, there could be as many as 5,000 NPCs that are out there.
Wow.
Existing on all different levels. So, yeah, so a lot of times those things that you see aren't real, or it could be that that being wanted to have an experience before they incarnate. They wanted to have an experience to know what it's like to have some kind of, fatal disease or something that's going to impact them. But usually most people, most source players will get to at least, you'll know they're a source player because they can at least attain the age of 12 as an example. And then everything else is like, may not be real.
Wow, that's something to think about. You also speak about the cube and you call it a time trap prison. What's that all about?
I noticed you're wearing a cube.
A cube?
Yeah, the cross.
Oh, the cross.
The cross is literally a tesseract or a hypercube. So the cube with its right angles is the mechanism that locks us into, it's part of what's been used to keep us in this prison experience, so to speak. So, and the cube is like everywhere. Like you got the Muslims that worship the cube at Mecca, for example. You have the Hebrews that strap the cube on their forehead or on their arm. And even the Christians will use the cross. They don't realize the cross is a cube, but if you take the symbology of the cross and you fold it together, it actually makes a cube. And it ties into Salvador Dali's famous painting called Corpus Hypercubus, which was Christ on a hypercube, which looks like a cross. And he's like attached to it by 4 other cubes. So yeah, the cube is like another part of the way this system works and the way things keep us trapped. And then the way that religion ties into that as well to keep us trapped here. But that's all ending because we're changing. Everything's changing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how religion plays into this. But before we get to that, I just want to let everybody know that you're listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled with our guests today. We're very excited to be able to speak with Christopher. And we're live on United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3, 107.7 in New Orleans. And thank you so much again for joining us. So is religion part of this matrix that we created? Like, do you believe Jesus existed and all of these prophets, Buddha, so on, Muhammad, or is that they're just a part of the game?
Yeah, so religion is a great control mechanism. Like religion, like literally controls us. A lot of us have literally religious patterns within our DNA that aren't even ours. It's from our ancestors, but we inherit them. We inherit certain qualities to keep us more like obedient to religion or not want to question religion or whatever that is. So religion is a control mechanism. And then the question is like, did someone like Jesus actually exist? So, and that's a hot potato topic right there, even to mention that Jesus may not have existed. But I'll just say from my own experience, because one of the things I do is I look into having access to the Akashic records.
Right.
So something called the Living Library of Light, which is more of like the records of the cosmos, so to speak. I couldn't find a Jesus. And by the way, Christ is a title. It's not one person. Or something called the Christ Consciousness Grid is a name given to a high frequency grid that's around the planet that's always been there. I call it like a higher love type frequency that's out there. So Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, they come up with the scriptures of the New Testament. Hundreds of years after everybody was already dead, like 300 years, they come up with these writings. And what it appears to be is they took elements of other stories and put them together into the story of Jesus. Everything starting from Horus from Egypt, and how like he was born of a virgin and those type of concepts, to this man named Apollonia of Tyana. And Apollonia was born right around right around the time Jesus Christ would have been born. And he was a prophet. He was a miracle worker. He raised the dead. He was a great teacher. When he would go from city to city, crowds would gather to hear his teachings, so to speak. So the question one has to ask is it possible that what we know about Jesus may have been plagiarized from the Council of Nicaea, from other people, from the lives of other people? So there are those type of concepts that I think anybody should really be able to like try to look at it, not being charged with, I know Jesus is real and he's my savior, but maybe view this as information, that maybe there's something more going on to the story. Because even the Bible is changing. There's all these like Bible Mandela effects. You know, Isaiah talks about, I remember talking about the lion shall lie down with the lamb.
Mhm.
And now it's the wolf will dwell with the lamb. It went from lion to wolf. Yeah. So, and there are all these Bible Mandela effects. The word matrix is now in the King James Version 5 times. And I'm like, I was, yeah, no, the word matrix in the King James Version and other versions of the Bible, I don't think so. Not that I remember.
Right.
And it usually refers to like the woman's womb is called the matrix. So, and it's funny too, because that's when I tune into it, that's how source players come into the game. You could only come into the game through the womb. Your mom has to be a source player. Even if she never was awakened and she was like really weird or difficult to deal with on one side of it, she had to be a source player for you to come into the game, because a non-player character mother can only produce NPC children.
Oh.
Yeah. So there are all these different things, and there's a big clue about matrix being the womb in the Bible. So how could the Bible change?
Right, exactly. How do you get to be a source player as opposed to an NPC?
Oh, you just are.
You just are.
Well, and the thing is, so some people might ask, wait, can I be an NPC? And the thing is an NPC would never ask themselves that question.
Right, right.
They're just programmed to do what they're doing. There's actually a type of AI that runs NPCs. They would never even ask that question. So if anyone is like considering, like, I wonder if I'm an NPC or not, if you're even wondering that, you're not. You're a source player. So
Because in games, NPCs do talk and they
Oh,
do
yeah.
participate up to a certain degree. So
Sometimes a big degree.
yeah, could we be programmed though to ask that question and be an NPC? I mean, I think it would be awful to be one, but
I mean, anything's possible, but I know that if you're on the awakening journey and you can, chances are that you're actually a source player.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
What about all these UAPs, UFOs, I like to call them. What about the emergence of all these sightings in the past decades? Is that just part of the matrix as well? Are we creating that?
That's really interesting because it's heating up, right?
Oh, yeah.
The drones or whatever over military bases and et cetera. So we're hearing more and more of that. And that's starting to come more into the public because the public's been taught that humans are at the top of the food chain and there's no other intelligent life. There's nothing more intelligent out there than a human being, an earthling, an earth human, so to speak. So now we have, even more of this information coming in, so that now we're like, wow, could there be more out there than what we've been taught? So whatever is happening, it's increasing people's understanding of the possibilities. There may be more out there. And then if we do ever have some kind of disclosure, that's going to be really wild, because that's really going to raise a lot of questions for people, especially why their government would have held it from them, why their government didn't want us to know. And then when we start to find out those reasons, man, this is a big healing process we're going to have to go through, because not all is as it seems.
No, definitely not. Disclosure is a very big topic right now. They're having all these committees, and they're always interesting to listen and watch. I don't know what will come of it, but I guess it's a wait and see game. What about things like near-death experiences? I've interviewed quite a few people that have had very intense NDEs. Is this part of the matrix as well? Is it all hallucinatory? Like,
No, it's like it's being revealed to more about how the reality works. And I know a lot of people that have had NDEs. A lot of their stories are like all the same, right? So you know there's something to it because there's
yeah, right.
so much similarity. But when that happens as well, it allows more of your higher self, that concept, to come into you. So NDEs also have that purpose as well. And that also can aid people with their awakening process. Because when someone has an NDE, they're going to start to like question, they might keep it a secret for a while because they're afraid of how like people would view them if they say something, but it still allows them to begin to question things. Might start doing research into other matters. Again, all exposing the way this world, this realm works.
Because Jesus does appear to a lot of folks, and it transforms their lives where they become intense believers in Christ and in Jesus. And there's always like a creator, a source. In most of the ones I've seen, unless they've had a negative NDE where they were thrown into the fiery pits of hell and came out of it, and then that changed their life. So how does the matrix fit into that whole dynamic, like the creator theory?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of times too, those things you experience are things that you're almost like maybe in the back of your mind, maybe expecting to experience. Some people will see like their dead mom and dad and other family members, or maybe their pets that have passed away. Like, hey, I've been waiting for you, come on to the other side with us. Other people get the hell realm experience.
Right.
Yeah, so there's all different experiences. What causes them exactly, like why someone have one experience versus another experience, I think that's more of an individual thing that happens. But again, I think the bottom line is it wakes people up that there's more to life than just our physical avatar. We are infinite, indestructible consciousness. And when we drop our body, we go on. Like it doesn't end there. So yeah, that's the bottom line.
How has this changed your life? Like how has all of this belief system, especially the Mandela Effect, changed your life?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a completely different person than I was 10 years ago. And literally, I'm continuing to change. Things that I would have been interested in the past, or doing this or doing that, I have zero interest. Like I can't even understand why I did certain things or felt certain ways about things. So yeah, so for me, I feel like it's changing. You become like more neutral about things in a good way. It's not like things upset you so much anymore. Like you're able to view the world differently, and it brings like an inner peace. Where so many people now, you watch the news and it's like, oh my God, World War III is going to start, or that's going to start, and people get the fear thing going on, or what's the next pandemic that's going to hit us, or whatever it is. You view the world completely differently, and then as you start migrating or going to like another timeline, because there's the concept where there are these two timeline branches that are starting to split off. One's going to the golden age, or like a new renaissance. The other one's going to what I would call the age of chaos, or the transhumanism one. So like people are making their decisions, even if they don't realize it. Are they going to be governed by fear and go down that fear timeline, or are they going to keep themselves in neutrality, staying in the heart, staying in their center, and not let these things like affect you? So
absolutely. Like for me, I noticed like a detachment from, it's hard to explain, but I feel like, do you ever see that video of this like person that's standing there and this crowd's rushing towards them and they're going in the opposite direction? Like that's what it feels like.
yeah.
It feels like everybody's coming this way and you're going that way. But and it's almost a good feeling because you can detach yourself from like the lies. You see things differently and they don't like bother you as much. as
Yeah.
being so attached to it. Am I right? Like,
Yeah. And then your gut instinct takes over more. You could discern the truth a little bit easier.
right.
It makes more sense. Like when the news or a politician is lying to you, you got to spot that stuff like really immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how have the people around you reacted to your progression of change and growth? You know, your family, your close friends. Did you lose friends, make new friends, acquaintances? Like, how did that work for you?
Yeah, you see, that's exactly what happens. So for me, it started with my business, right? So I was when I was experiencing these Mandela effects and stovetop stuffing disappearing and all that,
Right.
I was sharing it with people, like even in my own company, at our staff meetings, I would talk about the latest Mandela effects, and some people it was frightening them.
Yeah.
Some people quit. They didn't want to hear this stuff. Yeah, my best programmer quit because he's like, one of the Mandela effects was about Richard Simmons, you know, the exercise guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, I know that guy always wore a headband. And
Yeah.
now you can't find any photos of him ever wearing a headband. So I'm like, you're going to leave based off of Richard Simmons not wearing a headband? But then, yeah, no, your family thinks you're weirder than you were before, so to
Right.
speak. Your friends drop, and it's a natural thing as your frequency changes. Certain people just don't want to be around you anymore. But then new people come in, like new friends come in and
Right.
new acquaintances. So it's kind of like a changing of the guard, so to speak,
Yeah.
but like in a good
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I don't know. It's scary and yet exciting. It's both, you know. But that Richard Simmons thing is like I always remember him wearing a headband. Always.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, my mom bought like the VHS stuff for Richard Simmons, like Sweating to the Oldies, and even she would wear the headband like he was wearing, and I'd see her
Yeah.
like doing. I'm like, Mom, you're not even breaking a sweat, and it didn't matter to her. She was just like doing her dancing stuff. But yeah, the headband was everywhere.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I saw a good one recently. It was that Christmas song. Not You Can Count on Me. You can the lyrics to it.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And, right. What was that? It was not You Can Count on Me. You can shit. I can't think of the name of it. But this guy pulled out a bunch of records and there was like 8 of them that played it in the new dimension. And then he found one record that had the other lyric, the correct lyric, the one that we know of.
Right.
It wasn't You Can Count on Me. It was
that song I'll Be Home for Christmas?
Huh?
Was it the song I'll Be Home for Christmas?
Yeah. And it was it You Can Count on Me, and then there was the alternate one. Can't think of it. Isn't that awful? But yeah, and then he found this one record that had the lyric that everybody knew.
Gotcha.
Plan. Yeah. That's what it was. You Can Plan on Me is the new version, and You Can Count on Me is the one that we all know the song to have. So he pulled out like 8 records, and the first 7 said You Can Plan on Me. And then he pulled out, I think it was Karen Carpenter, and she was singing it, You Can Count on Me and not plan. That blew my mind because I always knew it as count. You can, I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. And then all of a sudden it's plan on me.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
There's a lot of lyrics, like a popular one too is from California Dreaming. So I'll say part of the lyrics, you fill in the blank. If you remember this.
Yeah.
Stopped into a church. I passed along the way. Well, I got down on my knees and I blank to pray.
Began to.
Exactly. It's always been began to pray. You know what it is now?
What?
Pretend to pray.
Oh, no way.
Pretend. Yeah. So anybody watching this?
Pray.
Yeah. Look up the lyrics for California Dreaming and you'll see it's always been pretend to pray. And I remember like you begin to pray. Or I began to pray.
Yeah, I began to pray. Why? nuances, though? Why are things changing in such small ways where people could say, like, I tried to explain this to my son, and he's in the medical field, and he's, this scientific person. Everything is facts, and,
Left
there's no
brain.
room for any of this stuff. And he argued with me for 10 minutes. It's just misunderstanding. It's crazy. None of this exists. I don't know why you're getting wrapped up in this. It's not true. People are just misunderstanding. That's what he was convinced. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, see, even when it comes to people that are scientifically bent, more left brain,
Right.
even the world of quantum mechanics is teaching them to question reality. The winners of the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics was "The universe is not locally real." So the winners of the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics won because they showed that this place isn't real. So if people really begin to look at what quantum mechanics is teaching us,
Yeah.
and all those different things, even the most left brain people have no excuse not to wake up. So what they might think is airy fairy, woo
Woo,
woo,
woo.
yeah,
Yeah.
is not. It's not at all. So, and I was that same. I know I was that same way. I'm a software engineer, same way. I needed to have facts, left brain only. That's how I make my decisions. And now when all these things started happening to me, it just flipped. I'm like, oh, there's
Remember,
another way.
do you remember what that moment, that discerning thing, or was it just cumulative for you? Did you have an epiphany where you woke up one day, or was it just a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, I had two events happen to me. The first one was, this is going to sound strange, but I've told the story before, so I'll just give you the highlights. But basically, I had done this. I had people over my house, and one of the things they were doing, it was like a tantric thing. I wasn't part of it, but they were doing eye gazing. And they're like, Chris, come on out, do some eye gazing with us. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And they're like, yeah, it's fun, blah, blah. I'm like, all right. So I wind up doing it, and you get matched. You don't know who you're going to get matched up with. And then you turn around, and I was matched up with this young lady. She's probably in her mid-20s, big green eyes and blonde hair. And we started doing the eye gazing, and I felt like I was going to pass out. I was probably, you do it for 3 minutes. I got maybe 30 or 40 seconds into it. Something was wrong. I'm like, I'm really sorry. Went to my bedroom, sit down on the edge of my bed. I look up, and there's two lion people in my bedroom, like human bodies, but lion heads. One was a male, one was a female. The male was wearing a blue military uniform, and he had medals on his chest, and the female had a blue dress. She had a ruby. So I'm thinking to myself, did somebody put a holographic projector in my bedroom? And I'm looking around for the cord. I'm looking around for how this is working. And I'm like, and they're just there. They're not saying anything. And then maybe a minute or two, they just kind of dissolved. And I'm like, okay, I'm not under the influence of any drugs. I feel totally sane. I just did a wacky eye gazing thing, which could have been the catalyst that caused this. So I experienced that. And then for me, I experienced soon after that, the JFK assassination, Zapruder film changing, going to 6 people in the car. And I knew that was wrong because I watched that video hundreds of times.
Oh, yeah.
There was no 6 people in the car. That's ridiculous. So then I went online, everything, showed the same exact Zapruder film. I thought it was like college kids playing a joke on people. Yeah. So it turns out I'm Googling it, and it says JFK assassination, Mandela Effect. And I'm like, what's this Mandela Effect? And then that got me into the whole thing of understanding what was going on.
Oh,
yeah.
So you kind of uncovered it yourself, in essence, and you started reading and researching it. And
right.
And how long ago was that?
It was right after Trump was elected in 2016. Because back then he said he was going to be releasing the Warren Commission report, which he never did. But I was looking at it again because the Warren report's going to come out, not redacted. You're going to get all the information. So I watched the video on my computer, and I'm like, it hurt my brain. Like it literally hurt my brain. I couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on.
Did you ever research what those lion people were? Like, did you ever look into that? What do you think that was? And what exactly is eye gazing? You just stare into each other's eyes until one person can't do it anymore? Or?
Yeah, because the concept with eye gazing, they don't say this. You're actually transmitting light codes to each other.
Oh.
And yeah, so light codes are very interesting because it's data, it's packets of data that someone has that they've been holding on to. And sometimes if you will look into their eyes, maybe just an instant, like sometimes I'll be at a random place walking down the street and I'll make eye contact with someone, maybe 3 seconds, and I'll be like, you just gave me all these light codes. I could tell like light codes came out of their eyes. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of like James Bond stuff because you can't plan this. Like on a higher level, it's planned, but down here, that seems to happen randomly. So yeah, so that's one angle to it. With the eye gazing, you get the light codes that are coming back and forth.
Maybe that person like transmitted that to you. Well, yeah, I mean, that could very well be. Because I mean, I believe that souls recognize each other, and even like through video, like I think souls recognize each other too. And maybe that's but I'm wondering what those lion people were. That had to freak you out.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't seem like it was scary to me or anything. Like I didn't get that impression at all. And I didn't know anything about like ET races or aliens or feline races or the Lyrans. I didn't know any of that stuff. So then I'm trying to go online. I'm like, what are lion people? Trying to figure it out. And it turns out, yeah.
Well, I know we have a hard stop in a few minutes, but I have so many more questions that maybe we could do this again someday.
Yeah.
I had a whole bunch more questions for you, but I wanted to know what the connection of paranormal is. And because a lot of people in this field are discovering that UFOs, Bigfoot, the paranormal, they're all connected dimensionally. And I wanted to get your take. Maybe you could give us 2 minutes of an answer for that. And then maybe next time we talk, we could delve into it some more.
Yeah. So UFOs, the Sasquatch, what actually are the Sasquatch? Are they in another dimension that we are? Can they sometimes come into our dimension? Like all that stuff is to me totally real, totally real. Again, global narrative will tell you aliens don't exist, Sasquatch doesn't exist, blah 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 doesn't exist. But I believe they are, and they are interdimensional, and that they can come into this dimension that we're in. So, I mean that's kind of the short answer to it.
Yeah. Do you think that some people just are more in tune, that their frequency is different or higher, that you can see shadow people and experience, the paranormal? Do you think it has to do with that?
Yeah. And I think what happens too is that like one of the things I can do is I can scan people's DNA and I could see like, did you have another life in a Sasquatch clan? And a lot of people have had actually lives being a Sasquatch. And then when that's in their DNA, it makes them more open to it. So these are usually the people that are having the experiences. Whether they totally believe it's real because there's an inner knowing that it's real, or they actually have experiences, with Sasquatch. I believe there's like a DNA link to that. And you're exhibiting that because you've had a past life or a past experience as that type of being. So keep in mind.
So Matthew said perhaps they exist on an astral plane like nature spirits and could manifest physically, visibly under the right circumstances.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, great point. I know you have to be heading out soon. Matthew also said, if we analyze the nature of illusion, we will be forever perplexed and uneasy. Nothing can be said about the phenomenal world accurately other than to realize it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah, because a lot of people will ask me like, do I believe the planet is a sphere, or do I believe it's flat? And you know what my answer is?
What? Both?
There isn't. No. Well, there is no Earth. This is all an illusion. It's literally all an illusion. And what our brain could process, I believe the Earth is even more than what we think it is. We're only seeing a small part of the Earth.
Oh
So,
gosh, I have to schedule another call with you. I have so many
cool.
great questions. It's been such a privilege to be able to speak with you today. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. This will be the teaser trailer to our next talk.
Yes, definitely. I'll hit you up via email. All right, Christopher.
Cool. Thank you,
Thank
Caroline.
you so much. Take care, dear.
Take care.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with Christopher, and I can't wait to do it again. And I'm going to try to schedule something soon with him because I have like at least 10 more questions I want to ask him. But again, you've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled live on United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And of course, each week, listeners are introduced to new featured guests from various shows, film, radio, all over the internet, authors, and beyond. And we cover topics ranging from ancient history, ufology, the paranormal, you name it, we cover it. So please be sure and join us. And please be sure and head on over to my YouTube channel, Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. I would be ever so grateful if you do. Thank you again so much. Have a blessed rest of the week and a fantastic weekend. Thanks. Bye-bye.